My husband cheated on me with his receptionist. My parents blamed me and refused me shelter when I needed it most. Now that I'm engaged to a successful man, they came back begging for forgiveness. But my fiancé exposed them in front of everyone, and what I told them broke them. I'm 32 years old. I work in digital marketing, and what my parents did to me 5 years ago still hurts when I think about it. But what happened a few months ago, when they tried to come back into my life like nothing happened, basically confirmed everything I already knew about them. I guess I should start from the beginning. When I discovered my ex-husband Ryan was cheating on me, because that's where everything went to shit. Literally everything. I had been married to Ryan for 3 years, and honestly, I thought we were happy. I mean, we had our problems like any couple, but nothing that made me think he'd be sleeping with his office receptionist. It was a Friday night. I remember perfectly because we had planned to go out to dinner, but he canceled, saying he had to work late. And I was like, okay, no problem. But something felt off, you know? Like that feeling in your stomach that tells you something doesn't add up. I checked his phone when he went to the bathroom. I know. It's wrong to check phones, but my instinct was screaming at me to do it. And there they were. The messages, pages and pages of conversations with Jessica, the 22-year-old receptionist, who was always super nice to me when I'd visit him at the office, with photos and plans and all the evidence I needed to know my marriage was a lie. I confronted Ryan that same night, and he didn't even deny it. He just started crying and saying he was sorry, that it had been a mistake, that she didn't mean anything. All the classic speech that men give when they get caught. But I had already made my decision. I told him to leave the house and that I didn't want to see him ever again. He went to stay with a friend, and I stayed alone in our apartment trying to process what had just happened. And the first thing I thought was that I needed to go to my parents, David and Margaret, because they had always been there for me, or at least that's what I believed until that moment. I called my mom, Margaret, the next day, a Saturday morning, crying so hard I could barely speak, and I told her everything, expecting her to tell me to come to their house, that I could stay with them as long as I needed. But what she said was something completely different, and I still can't believe those words came out of her mouth. She said, "Mia, what did you do to make Ryan look for another woman? Weren't you satisfying him? Did you gain a lot of weight?" I went silent because I literally couldn't process what I was hearing, and she continued saying that men don't cheat without a reason, that I must have done something wrong, that I should try to fix things with Ryan because divorce was a shame for the family. I tried to explain that I hadn't done anything wrong, that Ryan was simply an asshole who decided to cheat on me, but she didn't want to listen. She just kept blaming me and telling me I should be more understanding. My dad, David, got on the phone after that, and I thought maybe he would be different, that he would defend me. But no. He basically repeated everything my mom had said, adding that I had always been too independent, that probably that had emasculated Ryan. Yes, he used that word. And that if I got divorced, I would end up as a used woman that nobody else would want. I asked him directly if I could stay with them for a few days while I processed everything, and his answer was, "We don't think that's a good idea. You need to stay in your house and fix your marriage. We're not going to make it easy for you to run away from your responsibilities." I hung up the phone and cried for hours, because I hadn't just lost my husband, but apparently I had also lost my parents. Or maybe I never really had them. I don't know. I called my friend Nicole, who had been my roommate in college, and I told her everything that had happened, both about Ryan and about my parents. And she immediately told me to pack a suitcase and come to her apartment, that I could stay there as long as I needed. Nicole and her husband Andrew lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and they gave me their guest room. And honestly, I don't know what I would have done without them during those first months, because they were more family to me than my own parents. I hired a lawyer the following Monday and started the divorce process. I blocked Ryan everywhere because I didn't want to know anything about him. And I also stopped talking to my parents because every time they tried to call me, it was to tell me I was making a mistake, that I was destroying the family, that Ryan had called crying saying he loved me, basically trying to make me feel like the bad guy when I was the one who had been betrayed. My siblings had different reactions to all this. Walter and Alice, who are twins and like 3 years older than me, initially said they supported me, but after a while they started siding with my parents, saying that maybe I was being too dramatic, that everyone makes mistakes, that Ryan deserved a second chance, and eventually I stopped talking to them too, because I couldn't deal with that shit. Frederick and Emma, my other siblings who are older, like in their 40s and live in another state, did support me from the beginning. Frederick would call me every week to see how I was. And Emma would send me messages saying she was proud of me for having the courage to leave. But they have their own health problems and live far away, so they couldn't do much more than give me moral support from a distance. The divorce was finalized like 6 months after everything started. Ryan didn't fight anything because he probably felt guilty, or because his lawyer told him he had no case. I don't know. And honestly, I didn't care. I just wanted to be done with it and move on with my life. I moved to my own apartment, a small but cozy one in a neighborhood I liked. I got a better job with better pay. I started therapy to process all the trauma from the betrayal and my parents' rejection, and basically rebuilt my life from scratch. My parents tried to contact me a few times during that first year, sending me messages saying they were disappointed in me, that I had embarrassed the family, that Ryan had married Jessica. Yes, he married the receptionist like 6 months after our divorce, and that I had ended up alone because I was proud. But I completely ignored them because I had already accepted that they were never going to be on my side. Fast forward like 2.5 years after the divorce, I was in a good place mentally. I had healed quite a bit from everything that happened. I had an incredible circle of friends who supported me, and one night Nicole and Andrew invited me to dinner at a new restaurant that had opened downtown, a super elegant but cozy place that specialized in modern Italian food. The owner of the restaurant was Sebastian, though everyone called him Charlie. I think it was a childhood nickname that stuck. And he came out to greet some tables, including ours, and I'm not going to lie. When I saw him, I immediately thought he was gorgeous. Like he had that Italian chef vibe. Even though technically he wasn't the chef but the owner. With his warm smile and his eyes that sparkled when he talked about his restaurant. Nicole, who is the least subtle person in the world, immediately started flirting on my behalf, saying things like, "My friend Mia also loves Italian food. You should give her a tour of the kitchen." And I wanted to die of embarrassment, but Sebastian laughed and said he'd be happy to show me the kitchen if I was interested. And one thing led to another, and we ended up exchanging numbers that night. We started going out like a week later. At first just as friends because I still had my defenses way up after everything with Ryan, but Sebastian was so different, so genuine and attentive and respectful, that eventually I let my guard down and accepted that what I felt for him was real. We dated for like 6 months before making it official, and another 6 months after that he introduced me to his family. And that's when I found out that his family owned a super famous bakery chain throughout the region, like they have about 20 locations and are pretty well known, and that Sebastian had used part of his inheritance to open his own restaurant because he had always wanted to do something on his own. His family was incredible, so welcoming and loving. His mom hugged me the first time she saw me, as if I were already part of the family. And his dad asked me 1,000 questions, but not in an intimidating way, but because he genuinely wanted to get to know me. And I thought, this is what a family is supposed to be. This is what I never had with my own parents. Sebastian and I kept going strong, and like a year and a half into dating, he proposed to me. It was super romantic. He closed the restaurant one night and prepared a private dinner just for the two of us. And at the end, he brought out the ring and got down on one knee and asked me if I wanted to marry him. And obviously I said yes because I was in love with him and because I had finally found someone who valued and respected me. We posted photos of the ring and the engagement on social media. You know, the typical cheesy photos of engaged couples. And we tagged our families and friends. And we received like 1,000 congratulations messages from everywhere. It was beautiful, honestly. And then, like 3 days after posting the engagement photos, I receive an email from my mom, Margaret. The first one in literally 3 years since I stopped talking to them. And the email said something like, "Mia, we saw you're getting married. Congratulations. We'd like to talk to you and meet your future husband. We've been thinking about you a lot, and we believe it's time to reconnect as a family. We await your response." I read it like 5 times trying to process what I was seeing. And the first thing I thought was, seriously? 3 years without talking to me, 3 years blaming me for my divorce, and now they want to reconnect just when I'm getting married? I didn't respond to the email immediately because I needed to think carefully about what to do. I showed it to Sebastian and he said it was my decision, but that the timing seemed very suspicious. A week later, a Saturday afternoon, I was at my apartment with Sebastian watching a movie when someone knocks on the door. And when I open it, my parents are standing there with flowers in their hands and smiles on their faces, as if nothing had happened. My first reaction was to close the door in their faces, but Sebastian put his hand on my shoulder like, "Let them talk at least." And I, against my better judgment, let them in. They sat in my living room and started with a prepared speech about how they had reflected on their behavior, that they had been very hard on me, that they understood it had been a difficult time, basically a generic apology that sounded rehearsed, and that I didn't mention even once the specific things they had said to me, like that I was to blame for the cheating or that I was a shame to the family. After the speech, my mom, Margaret, asked Sebastian about his work, and he told her about the restaurant. Being nice because Sebastian is like that, always polite, even when he shouldn't be. And then my dad, David, asked, "And what does your family do?" And Sebastian answered that his family had a bakery chain. He mentioned the name of the chain casually, and I saw how my parents' eyes literally lit up, like that look you get when you just won the lottery. My mom immediately became super friendly, saying things like, "Oh, we know those bakeries. They're excellent. Your family must be very successful." And my dad started asking questions about how many locations they have and if they have plans to expand, and me sitting there thinking, they're here for the money. They came because they found out I'm marrying someone from a wealthy family. I endured like another half hour of awkward conversation, and then I told them that Sebastian and I had plans and they needed to leave. And my mom said, "Okay, honey, but before we go, we want to tell you something important. We hope you don't make the same mistakes you made with Ryan. You know, neglecting yourself, not putting enough effort into your marriage. This guy seems good and comes from a good family, so don't ruin it." I froze because I couldn't believe that after 3 years and their supposed apology, they were still blaming me for what happened with Ryan. And before I could respond, my dad, David, looked at Sebastian and told him, "You have to be careful with Mia. She can be very stubborn and proud. You're going to need to keep her in line if you want the marriage to work." Sebastian, who until that moment had been quiet and polite, got up from the couch and his face completely changed. And he told my parents, "With all due respect, but I think you need to leave now. What you just said to Mia is not acceptable, and I'm not going to sit here listening to you insult the woman I love." My dad tried to say something about how he was just giving advice from his experience, but Sebastian interrupted him and said, "Do you want to know how much my family is worth? Is that what you really want to know? Because I can tell you exact numbers if that makes you leave faster." My parents turned red. My mom, Margaret, started stuttering something about how they weren't there for money but because they wanted to reconnect with their daughter, and Sebastian just said, "If you really wanted to reconnect with her, you would have done it 3 years ago when she needed you, not now that you saw an opportunity." And he opened the door telling them, "Have a good afternoon." After they left, I collapsed on the couch and started crying, not from sadness but from rage and frustration, because there had been a small part of me that hoped maybe my parents had really changed, that maybe they genuinely wanted to fix things, but it became super clear that they were only there out of interest. Sebastian hugged me and let me cry on his shoulder, and then he told me I didn't have to deal with them ever again if I didn't want to, that his family loved me and they could be my family now, and I felt so grateful to have him, to have found someone who truly valued and defended me. I thought that would be the end of the drama, but of course it wasn't, because like 2 days later I received a call from my paternal grandparents, my dad, David's parents, who I also hadn't spoken to in years, and my grandfather Frederick, yes, my brother is named after him, immediately started yelling at me on the phone about how dare I treat my parents like that they had gone to my house with all the humility in the world to apologize and I had made my boyfriend humiliate them, that I was a spoiled and ungrateful daughter, that after everything my parents had done for me, that's how I repaid them. Basically a sermon of, like 20 minutes where he didn't let me get a word in. When he finally shut up, I told him, "Grandpa, do you know why I stopped talking to my parents 3 years ago? Did they tell you they blamed me for my ex-husband's cheating? Did they tell you they denied me shelter when I needed it?" And he told me those were my excuses, that surely I was exaggerating, that my parents would never do something like that. And I told him, "You know what? I'm not going to convince you of anything. If you want to believe them, that's fine, but don't call me again to yell at me." And I hung up on him. A week after the call from my grandfather, I received a long email, like 3 pages, from my paternal grandparents where they basically accused me of having an attitude problem, of being disrespectful, of letting my rich future husband manipulate me against my family. Yes, they said that. And that if I didn't apologize to my parents, they didn't want to know anything more about me. I didn't respond to the email because frankly I was tired of all this. I just forwarded it to Frederick and Emma so they'd know what was happening, and they supported me completely. Frederick even called our grandparents to defend me, though that caused a massive family fight that I prefer not to think about. Like 2 more months passed, and one afternoon I was arriving at my apartment after work when I see my parents waiting for me in the hallway outside my door, and my first reaction was literal panic. Like, what are they doing here again? But when I got closer, I saw that they both looked different. Smaller somehow. I don't know how to explain it. And my mom, Margaret, had red eyes like she had been crying. This time, they didn't come in with a prepared speech. My dad, David, just said, "Mia, we came to truly apologize this time. Without conditions, without excuses. What we did to you 3 years ago was unforgivable, and what we said to you the last time we were here was also horrible." And my mom added, "You have every right to hate us, to never want to see us again. But we needed to tell you that we're sorry, that we were terrible parents to you when you needed us most." I stood there in the hallway, not knowing what to say, because this apology did sound sincere. And my dad continued saying they had been going to therapy, that the therapist had made them see how much damage they had done to me, that they understood if I never forgave them, but that at least they wanted me to know they recognized their mistake. I asked them, "And what about Sebastian's money? Are you going to say that had nothing to do with you coming the first time?" And my mom admitted, "Yes, it did. When we saw you were getting married to someone from a well-known family, we thought maybe you had finally gotten someone good, someone who would make us look good. And that was wrong. We realized we were only thinking about ourselves again, not about you." I told them I appreciated the apology, but that I needed time, that I couldn't just forget 3 years of pain and rejection just because now they were being honest. And my dad said he understood, that they didn't expect things to go back to how they were before, is that they just wanted me to know they were sorry, and that if someday I decided to give them another chance, they would be there. They left without fighting, without trying to force anything, and I stayed in my apartment feeling weird, like relieved but also confused and still angry, because part of me thought, why did it take them so long to realize? Why did they have to get to the point where a therapist told them? Sebastian and I got married like 4 months after that last visit from my parents. It was a beautiful wedding in the garden of his parents' house, with like 150 guests, including all his extended family, Nicole and Andrew obviously, some friends from work, Frederick and Emma who came with their spouses, even though Emma didn't look very healthy, but she made the effort to be there, which meant a lot to me. I didn't invite my parents to the wedding, or Walter, or Alice, or my paternal grandparents, because even though my mom and dad had apologized, I still wasn't ready to have them at one of the most important days of my life, and Sebastian completely supported me in that decision. The wedding was perfect. I cried during the vows. Sebastian's family made me feel so loved and welcome, and when I was dancing with Sebastian, I thought, this is what I deserve. This is real happiness with people who genuinely care about me. The day after the wedding, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was from my mom, Margaret. Apparently, she had bought a burner phone just to send me that message because I still had them blocked on their real numbers, and the message said, "Congratulations on your wedding. We saw the photos on Facebook from your siblings. You looked beautiful. We hope you're very happy. We don't expect a response. We just wanted you to know we're thinking of you." I responded after thinking about it for several days. I just said, "Thank you. I appreciate the message." And nothing more. Because I'm not ready for more than that yet, and maybe I never will be, and that's okay. The thing is that now I have a life I love, a husband who defends and values me, an in-law family that treats me better than my own family ever treated me, and friends who have been with me through thick and thin, and that's enough. Maybe someday I can completely forgive my parents, or maybe not. Honestly, I don't know. But what I do know is that I no longer need their approval to be happy, and that's the best revenge of all. I suppose, just living well and being with people who truly love you.